Y'all, with Darkmoor officially confirmed as the next world in the Wizard101 storyline, I think it's high time we revisit the iconic villain that we encounter in our last experience, our only experience in Darkmoor so far, Malistaire himself. Now, when making this video, I went down a wild-ass rabbit hole and encountered some more untold parts of his story, some loose ends that I really think we're about to get a resolution to in the new world of Darkmoor. Now, let's start with the part of Malistaire's story that I think most people are already familiar with, right? His storyline in Arc 1. Malistaire starts off as the death professor in Ravenwood, but very tragically, his wife, Sylvia Drake, the life professor at the time, passes away from a mysterious cold. And in his despair and need to bring her back from death, he basically goes on a rampage. He uproots the death school, flees Ravenwood, causes chaos all the way through Mushu and Dragonspire and beyond, and tries to resurrect his wife using the power of the Dragon Titan. Now, this, more traditional telling of Malistaire's story, it is like painting him as a very, very malicious character, right? He straight up gives a deathly illness to the Emperor of Mushu. He frees a bunch of career criminals at Marleybone, right? Not one place that he visits is free of negative consequences as a result of him being there in Arc 1. However, there are multiple loose ends in his story that I think actually paint him in a much better light. One of the main consequences that happened as a result of Malistaire basically leaving Ravenwood was that he stole Bartleby's Eye of History along the way. This was explained in a quest very, very early on in the main Wiz storyline. Now, his reason for stealing the Eye of History that we eventually return to Bartleby is literally not even explored until the world of Mirage. But this part of the story is very, very different than what you would expect from Malistaire. It doesn't actually seem like Malistaire is just being petty as hell and just stealing Bartleby's eye so he can't be tracked as he rampages across the spiral. Right, that was the initial way I guess it was portrayed. It was actually a way for him to trade information with the Cabal all the way back then. The trade was that he would give the Cabal the Eye of History and they would let him know how to use the Croconomicon to bring Sylvia Drake back. Now, while this itself doesn't clear Malistaire of any wrongdoing whatsoever, it does become a little curious, right? How did the Cabal know that Malistaire would ever get into a position where he's so mentally away from his norm that he would steal an Eye of History from Bartleby and trade it with them? A lot of people have theorized this, and I still don't know if they're ever going to explain this, but a lot of people have said that the Cabal might have planted the mysterious illness in Sylvia Drake as a way to make Malistaire lose his focus, and they could basically manipulate him to steal the Eye of History. Now, if you think that's far-fetched, I actually think it's not whatsoever. The Cabal has actually been involved in a lot of manipulation throughout every single arc in Wizard101. This is especially apparent in Arc 2. The main reason why we even come to Chrysalis is to chase after Morganthe. And yet, by the time that we confront her, we had already been manipulated by Old Cobb and one of his minions, Taylor Coleridge, who had already been with Morganthe way during her earliest days in this world. Right? He's basically gone mad, probably because of his exposure to Old Cobb, and he was manipulated into convincing us that we needed him to help us defeat Morganthe, and that's why we ended up freeing him. If us releasing Old Cobb in order to defeat Morganthe was intentional, that means that Old Cobb and all the people that he was basically influencing in the Cabal were planning things multiple years, decades, several worlds of plot in advance. An organization that's powerful and manipulative enough to do that, right? Literally steer Morganthe down a path where the wizard would have to intervene and free Old Cobb as a consequence. I think if they could do that, it's not crazy to me that they could cause a cold that could steer Malistaire in a direction where he was easier to manipulate too. This little idea of shadow magic and mysterious illness also rears its ugly head again in Arc 3. I don't know if y'all remember at the beginning of Polaris when the spiral door basically got exposed, I guess, to the problems in the spiral and Bartleby fell ill. In a shocking similarity to what happened to Sylvia Drake, even the life professor in Ravenwood couldn't figure out what was wrong, what was behind this mysterious illness that Bartleby suddenly was facing. We actually end up going after the Eye of History to make Bartleby feel better, but we can only cure him later down the line by being his scion. The actual cause of the illness is never actually explained. A lot of people have theorized what could have caused it. In my opinion, it's some sort of shadow-related magic that is a little bit more antithetical to the Spiral and Bartleby's role in it. I think it would be crazy for that not to have some similarity to whatever happened to Sylvia Drake, simply because she was a life professor too. She fell mysteriously ill. She couldn't do anything about it. If you connect all of those pieces together, it really is very, very easy to suggest that Malistaire might not have had as much control over where he ended up and what happened as a consequence of his actions as much as we would assume. I think the quest with like his little journal entry where he talks about how he's very suspicious of the Cabal's intentions with the Eye of History, and kind of the desperation that he feels in needing to trade it for info with Sylvia, it really begs a very important question. Let's say that the Cabal had never given him a way out of all this darkness that he was experiencing. Would he have even left Ravenwood to begin with? Is there a world where, yes, he was in a dark place, but he would have eventually coped and moved on from the death of Sylvia if he knew, if he gained closure from the fact that he could never actually bring her back, right? When someone is in a really dark place and you give them a hope, that could be the one powerful thing that shifts their entire moral compass. If the Cabal had never let him trade the Eye of History, would he have ever been evil to begin with? Or could his entire trajectory have been totally different? I think that's a real question to ask. I think the only thing real about Malistaire was his despair and love surrounding Sylvia Drake. I think a lot of his actions, a lot of his bigger consequential actions were more things that happened as a result of manipulation. That really begs the question, what more did the Cabal use Malistaire to do now that we're actually allied with them at the end of Wallaroo, right? With the end of the old one. Who knows what else they're going to reveal to us? I think that's one thing that might actually lead us to Darkmoor, meaning there might be some weird connection to Malistaire that actually ties a real bow on his character as maybe not just evil, but a little bit more misunderstood. But also, if anything we've learned from like Arc 2 and beyond, Shadow seems to not only corrupt, but control people. When Malistaire was basically resurrected using shadow magic, and he became something that was literally corrupted by death and shadow, as Sylvia said, at the end of Darkmoor, was he able to be manipulated back then too? He clearly wasn't himself. Is there a reason why he ended up in Darkmoor is the real question. And if there is a reason, I would imagine it's super tied to what happens next in the main storyline that we're gonna get when Darkmoor releases this fall. Overall, I don't think Malistaire's ever coming back, but I don't think his story is done in the storyline, mainly because they're bringing Darkmoor back. But I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts. Do y'all think that there's a reason why they haven't resolved some of these plot points around literally the most iconic villain ever? And you guys think that Darkmoor being the first world of the next arc has anything to do with everything that happened before involving Malistaire and the Cabal? Or if not, why do you guys think the arc is starting in Darkmoor of all places, where we actually faced off against Malistaire? Is there any reason to be here over another world? I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. This is a little bit of a conspiracy theory, but I do think a lot of people don't know about this part of Malistaire's story because it happens way after Arc 1. Let me know y'all's thoughts. I look forward to reading all of y'all's comments. Drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a sub review, and as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon. And yeah.